Now, before you all go thinking the future is bright and rosy and perfect and that a connected world of devices is all well and good, I don't know if you saw what happened at the end of last month. There's a very famous security researcher who had outed a couple of hackers who were arrested. His blog, which was hosted, I think, on one of the cloud services, was attacked by a 600 gigabit per second attack, which it turns out was done by an army of subverted webcams. What are we going to do? If there's 35 billion devices that are connected in the world in 2020, and a lot of them will have security problems, what are we going to do about that? To find out, we are going to ask an expert, the director for the Australian Centre for Cybersecurity at Uni New South Wales, Canberra. Please welcome Jill Slay.
Thank you. Yes, I'm the person who's going to come here and pour cold water on all your enthusiasm. Just have to acknowledge my heroes are Mike Burgess and Ben Hayes. These are good guys, and you guys have the wonderful privilege of securing your enterprises. When I look at the context in which we're working, I'm looking at one where we're looking at startups and SMEs, and I want to just go into some of my hesitation, and I want to present you with some of the challenges that I think you're going to face. So in no way negative. I understand about industry and disruption, but I'm taken back to between 2001 and 2005 when we started to connect control systems, SCADA systems, to the internet. We saw a huge advantage, which it looks to me like I'm the cautious person in a room of excited people, and I what was happening in those days when we could suddenly find that we could do our billing, we could collect different kinds of data and corporatize it. And I fear that we may be in the same place now. So let me just tell you about myself very quickly. I'm an engineer. I went into IT security later. UNSW obviously has a big campus in Sydney where we also do good work in cybersecurity. My centre is a cross-disciplinary one which brings together researchers from across the whole of UNSW, from Kensington, Canberra, and wherever we exist. We include lawyers, people who do machine learning, engineers, computer scientists, ethicists, and in Canberra, I teach all undergraduates. That's about 350 a year. They have an intro to cybersecurity, have about 200 master's students doing masters in cybersecurity policy, systems engineering, the pen tester's master's degree, the forensic master's degree, and the advanced tradecraft master's degree. We're eclectic. I have about 16 staff around me in Canberra. As a professor, my own discipline is digital forensics. So since about 2001, I've been asking the question, what will the bad guys do with the devices? What will they do with new technology? What will law enforcement, what will we good guys do? Where will the evidence and where will the intelligence be about what's going on? This is what has driven me. So you do realise there are difficulties with cybersecurity. We're surrounded by it. The banks deal with it all the time, the telcos deal with it all the time, and it's something that is endemic to the whole of society, the whole of the world. Just as though we have a huge shortage of data scientists, we have an equivalent shortage of cybersecurity professionals, and an even greater shortage of those who can deal with big data and cybersecurity. We're all in the same boat. You guys and small guys find it hard to employ qualified people, so do I. I work just as hard, and I compete in the market to get people to come and do education and research so as to train a new generation as well. So I'm going to talk about some of the difficulties that I see, and essentially I think what for us, especially in my institute, essentially cybersecurity is not network security. There are many, many different components of cybersecurity, and this is a generalized term which almost has been forced on us. But I think now we understand this encapsulates quite a lot of issues in cybersecurity. So in different organizations, in different countries, in different environments, the threat to the security of your system, socio-technical system, is going to be different. A way of understanding it is this diagram which we've sort of made based on some work done by Bell Labs, is to understand that there are 8 different vectors of potential vectors of attack and response to a system. It could be, perhaps one of the easiest ones to talk about is software. So we understand that we can be attacked through malware. We have to defend ourselves against malicious software. This is just a very simple diagram. So to make sure the policy people understand there are technical issues and that the technical people will understand there are policy issues. One of the things that we bear in mind is that the world is highly complex. And so for us who are law-abiding and we're big companies, whoever we are, we have to be governed by policy, regulation and law. The problem for us, and ethics, the problem for us is the bad guys are not governed by policy, regulation, law and ethics. So even if we become as agile as possible, they're going to be much more agile than us. So this is something that we have to take into the systems that we're looking at. So we spend a lot of money, and essentially, why is it so hard? I think there are many reasons why it's so hard. I live in Canberra, so I'm influenced by what goes on in Canberra. What I see in Canberra is the vendor solution to everything, because it would appear that we just have to buy the right tool and perhaps the right vendor training to accompany the tool, and then we'll see a system that's secure. You know, just if anybody promises you that, that's not true. But if you live in my world, in the training, teaching, research world, even the world of the Australian Research Council, it's actually really difficult to understand who wants to be the leader in cybersecurity, who wants to actually say, this is the direction that we should go nationally. We do now have a government cyber strategy which needs to be implemented. But if you were to look at the academic literature, and that's what professors do, there are 2 major voices in the literature. One is the computer scientists who have done great work in developing the algorithms and the machine learning and all those things that we trust. The trusted systems where we have formal proofs of trust, or we used to at least. But also, this is the realm of national security, so cybersecurity for national security. And I guess that's where I sit, with my head in the space, where I actually want to do research and teaching which supports the security of the country. So cybersecurity gets mixed in with national security. So what's difficult about security in general, cybersecurity in particular? Why is there a problem? So what we've seen happen, and perhaps I can talk about Stuxnet as weaponization of the internet. Most of us know that story. If we go back to 2005, that was when I first really understood about insecurities of control systems. That's when, in a report to the US president, there was a focus on the Maroochy-Shire Water Company incident of 2001, which is claimed to be the first attack on critical infrastructure of a Five Eyes Western country. That was in Australia. And that was a disgruntled insider who had the passwords already. So we've moved in about, 14 years to targeted attack, where we have customized, really elegant malware delivered, we assume through a flash drive, but we don't know, possibly by a contractor, but we don't know, and highly targeted. Malware, which if it had just done its original job, which could work through the internet and find just the system that it wanted, with the right number, in the right place at the right time. That, even though it's really bad, That's elegant. There is an elegance in that was never in the Mauritius incident, but we live in that environment. We have offensive cyber warfare. I've been teaching cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, cyber crime. Quite difficult to differentiate within Australia between those things, because the technology which drives crime, terrorism and warfare is ostensibly the same technology. It's the purpose, the definition, the legislation, the rules of engagement, which to me appear to be the different things. But we live in that kind of environment where these are the things which have become commonplace. I was in a taxi coming, and I had a Russian taxi driver who was telling me all about the Ukraine. There are all these incidents where we are saying some nation-state group, set of bad guys, have attacked some other nation-state group, good guys. And this is the environment that we live in. But also, if we dig down, and I too worked overseas. I worked in Asia for 10 years. I worked in an African developing country for 2 years, which had no a couple of years ago, no cybercrime legislation, no security culture within the country, let alone the companies. I'd never seen that kind of lack of understanding in a developed country. But we have different levels of security culture. Australia is a country of small to medium enterprises. And so my work in South Australia, we did some research with SMEs to understand how they would deal with cybersecurity in a general environment. They struggle because to accessing the right level of staffing at the right cost is really hard for them. We're in a country where very often we have poor management of the cybersecurity issue, especially those small companies. It's becoming more and more an issue for boards, risk, cybersecurity, insurance, etc. But one other piece of work that we did actually looked at the security of control systems across the country. And much of what we had to report back was actually, very often it wasn't a technical issue, but it's a communications issue. Engineers and IT not wanting to talk to each other, engineers who said systems belonged to them, IT people who wanted to do patching, engineers who wouldn't let IT people do patching, physical security being incredibly important to some groups, logical cybersecurity not being so important, just poor management and poor communications. And these do exist in this country. So while we can look at the top end of town, I still fear, and I'm not a business person, that the top end is going to be reliant on the low end. And that's where the risk is. So I'll just quickly rush through these. So we do have models which come out of our training, like CISS people with a CISSP or other certifications, CISM. We have models which help us to look at a system, to analyse it, to diagnose it and say, well, let's look at the access control, the telecoms and network security. Let's look at whether or not we use crypto. Let's look at the physical security. Let's look at business continuity. Let's look at law. Let's look at forensics. Here's a way, a diagnostic framework to try to diagnose a system, to understand where we might be vulnerable. But we get to the stage where then we have to add the Internet of Things. For me, my first time I came across the idea of the Internet of Things was in 2005. I remember it very clearly. There's a guy called Craig Valley, who's a professor at Edith Cowan, and he'd written a paper on the Internet-enabled fridge. That was 2005, must be the early days. But Craig's paper was all about the bad guys hacking into the fridge and increasing the temperature, and we would have water flowing in all our houses. And it was a whole set of kind of, I suppose, 2005 kind of scenarios of how the hackers would take over our houses. But yet, for me, that was the dawning of it. I tried to apply for a grant to get a fridge. In those days, they cost $15,000, and nobody would give me $15,000 to try and hack a fridge. But I just remember this incredibly vividly, because most of the time, people like me, we do this job because we have fun, okay? I can be really serious here, but if you were to go and read all my papers, we have hacked in the best possible sense. Every kind of device you can imagine. We often walk a few steps behind you agile people who are adopting them. You adopt them, and then we attack them to tell you why you shouldn't use them. That's who we are. So there is a sense in which, although, I mean, you can read papers and I could express this seriously to you, there is a sense in which what our mantra is, don't bolt on the security after. Can you please put the security in, security by design? Are you with me? Okay, cool. I actually know, I know you guys what you do, but not everybody is hacking theirs to death. So I'm preaching, hack it to death yourself. Okay, this is the sort of the subtext. So we know there's loads of devices. So what are the characteristics? Very, very quickly going through this. They're a thing. They're connected to the internet. They might be IP version 4, might be 6. They don't have to be wireless. There are other kinds of connections that they could be used. And power management is a very important issue for these small devices. So that's what we're looking at. So this is where I want to get to. There are huge challenges. So people like me train other people to be, and you employ them, you pay them good money, and they have frameworks, and they have an understanding of traditional networks, traditional control systems. They understand about privacy and data, but now you're presenting them, and they're your potential staff or your potential collaborators. They're potential startups, and you're presenting them with embedded operating systems with security vulnerabilities. You don't have the power of Microsoft or whatever behind you. Embedded hardware which may have security vulnerabilities, you don't know. The device may run for decades, and they've been built at a cheap price, quick time to market, and probably the security hasn't been considered if you've got all these point devices. If they were medical devices, they may be covered by stringent regulations. So you would understand that they've been tested and they were safe. But other devices, and people have shown them to me, have very little testing at all. And some of the people who own them may not even be aware they're present, and if there's not going to be, you're not going to get your regular weekly upgrade for these devices. They may have, they have got network connectivity, they have got operating systems, they are hardware, and this is a major challenge. You guys have been presenting the benefits, I'm presenting the challenges. So the examples, I have the Krebs for Security website as an example, but also I noticed that Symantec and others are revealing far more detail. People are revealing detail about the malware that's being used, and they're revealing detail about some of the solutions. Now, I want to tell you that I've seen this happen before. I've seen this happen with control systems, I've seen this happen with SCADA systems, and in 2001 or 2005, I've been trained in the US, I'm a professor in the US as well, in Idaho. I've had a lot of training, and I could see what the US government has gone and done, and they've often been way ahead of us, leading us in terms of what they've done in their national labs with SCADA systems. But here we've got something that unless we control it, unless we have secure platforms, I don't understand how we're not just creating a rod for our own back. Because the growth of cybercrime in this country has been exponential. It's underreported. Perhaps, we have done a lot of work and we've written on this stuff, but unfortunately, cybercrime, breaches of security are not always reported to police. Therefore, I believe in Queensland, for instance, there are meant to be more cases of domestic violence than cybercrime. And therefore, national resources are not put into the cybercrime issues because we're dealing with the very real cases of domestic violence. So, unfortunately, we haven't got the financial resources, we haven't got the people resources to deal with these things. I was talking to my own guys. I went into one of my labs the other day, and I said, "Where's the plant pot gone from the corner, and what's that light bulb doing there?" "Oh, I'm teaching them to hack the Internet of Things, because they're going to have to defend the Internet of Things." And then I went over there, and then he started saying, "Look what I've done with the camera." And so there is a tendency for people like me. I mean, when I first started, it was unethical as a professor or as a senior lecturer to talk about hackers. But now we're at the stage where we're trying to train a new generation of people who might have the equivalent of a vocational qualification to understand what the Internet of Things looks like, what breaches to the Internet of Things looks like, and how, in their everyday jobs, they can deal with it. But as soon as we do that, we're going to have a whole generation of hackers who will do that too. They will do that because they belong to nation states, because they're just criminals who can get money. But we have created something which has, you know, the Internet of Things has a bright, shiny future. But unless we actually build in the security now, we're way past the beginning. We need to build the security in now. We need secure platforms. And when you're going to have these secure platforms, you also need to think about the issues that we have just seen about the Bureau of Statistics. It doesn't matter which breach you talk about. As soon as you have a network or a system, your secure platform, you better secure your secure platform, because this is a single point of failure as well. So while I commend everybody for their excitement, and I trust you guys will secure everything, because I might be a customer of yours, but let's develop a culture of security as we develop this culture of disruption and agility. Thank you.